Just because a food is labeled gluten-free doesn't mean it's safe or even healthy. That's a bold statement, I know. But if you've been avoiding gluten and still feel joint pain, bloating, low energy, or brain fog, this might explain why. You see, many people turn to gluten-free products thinking they've solved the problem. But in reality, they've only traded one issue for another, sometimes an even worse one. Let me ask you this. Have you ever eaten something marked gluten-free, maybe a slice of bread or a muffin, and still didn't feel quite right afterward? You're not alone. Thousands of people are finding that while they have cut out gluten, their symptoms haven't disappeared. That's not your imagination. It's not just bad luck. It's the hidden truth behind so many gluten-free foods. Because what often replaces gluten isn't a better choice. It's just different. Rice flour, tapioca blends, processed starches. These ingredients might lack gluten, yes, but they come with their own problems. Blood sugar spikes, inflammation, digestive discomfort. And here's the kicker. If your goal is to reduce inflammation, protect your gut, or support your metabolism, some of these gluten-free substitutes may actually work against you. That's what this video is about. Today, I'm going to walk you through three things. First, the gluten-free flours that might be silently sabotaging your health. Second, the better options, flours and foods that nourish, not harm. And third, if you're not celiac but wondering whether you can ever bring gluten back into your life, I'll show you the safest, smartest way to test that. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand gluten more clearly, but you'll know how to eat in a way that supports your body, not confuses it. Let's get into it. When we think about gluten, most people picture bread, pasta, or pastries, and the decision to go gluten-free seems simple. Cut out the wheat and you're safe. But what if I told you the story is much more complex than that? Let's start with a word you may not have heard before: prolamins. These are storage proteins found in grains like wheat, rye, and barley. Gluten is a type of prolamin, specifically gliadin and glutenin in wheat. But here's where it gets interesting and where the science gets deeper. When we digest these proteins, tiny fragments, called peptides, are released. And for some people, those peptides trigger a reaction in the immune system. In celiac disease, it's a full-blown immune assault. But even if you don't have celiac, your body might still react in subtle ways. Inflammation, brain fog, fatigue, skin issues. These aren't always in your head. They're real and they're measurable. A study published in Nature in 2024 revealed that certain gluten-derived peptides, especially those rich in the amino acid proline, bind tightly to specific immune receptors, like HLA-DU2-5. That binding can set off an immune cascade, even in people who haven't been diagnosed with celiac. It's like lighting a match in a dry forest. All it takes is the right trigger. And it's not just about wheat. Barley, rye, and even oats, for some, contain similar storage proteins. They might not be called gluten, but their effects can be surprisingly close. That's why many people go gluten-free and still don't feel better. But here's the twist. Not all discomfort tied to grain consumption is caused by gluten. In fact, a 2025 study from Australia found that many people who believed they were sensitive to gluten still had symptoms, even when they were given a placebo. That suggests the culprit might be something else, like FODMAPs, which are fermentable carbohydrates found in many grains, fruits, and vegetables. They can cause bloating, gas, and discomfort, not because of immune response, but because of how your gut bacteria break them down. So where does that leave us? It means we need to shift our thinking. Instead of asking, is gluten the problem? We should ask, what kind of reaction is happening in my body and why? That opens the door to more thoughtful, personalized decisions. Maybe it's gluten. Maybe it's a gut imbalance. Maybe it's the food additives or blood sugar roller coasters caused by so-called safe flours, and that's why going gluten-free isn't enough. If we want to truly heal, we need to dig deeper because it's not just about what you take out of your diet, it's about what you put in. You've made the switch. You've cleared your pantry of anything with wheat, rye, or barley. You're reaching for the gluten-free crackers, the rice-based breads, the almond flour muffins. It feels like progress, right? But here's the hard truth. Not all gluten-free foods are safe. In fact, some might be doing more harm than good. Let's start with rice flour. It's everywhere in gluten-free baking. It's light, it's neutral in flavor, and it gives baked goods a soft, familiar texture. But under the surface, there's a big problem. Rice flour is high glycemic. That means it spikes your blood sugar fast and hard. And for many people, especially those over 60, those blood sugar swings are more than just numbers. They're inflammation, joint pain, fatigue, and stubborn belly fat. A 2023 meta-analysis comparing flours found that refined rice flour raised post-meal glucose more sharply than traditional wheat flour in many cases. That's a shocking finding. You're avoiding gluten, thinking you're playing it safe, but your metabolic system is under stress. And there's more. Tapioca starch, another common gluten-free ingredient, may be easy to digest, but it's pure starch with almost no fiber, no protein, and virtually no nutrients. It gives structure, sure, but at what cost? For older adults trying to support blood sugar, weight, and inflammation, it's an empty promise. Even many gluten-free, whole grain blends aren't as healthy as they look. Flip the label and you'll see a long list of additives: gums, emulsifiers, added sugars, natural flavors, all designed to mimic the elasticity and texture of gluten. But your body isn't fooled. These highly processed ingredients often feed the wrong bacteria in your gut, triggering bloating, irregularity, or worse. One commenter put it perfectly. If you look at some gluten-free breads that are so-called healthy, there are so many extra added ingredients that are not flour, water, yeast, or sourdough. And that's the point. Real food shouldn't read like a chemistry experiment. Here's a better way to think about it. Instead of asking, is this gluten-free? Ask, is this blood sugar friendly? Instead of saying, there's no gluten here, I'm safe. Ask, will this support my gut or confuse it? Because gluten-free isn't automatically healthy. It's not a magic label. It's just a starting point. And if you don't choose your replacements wisely, you may end up feeding the very symptoms you were trying to escape. But don't worry, we're not stopping here. In the next part, I'll show you the better choices. The ones that don't just avoid gluten, but actively support your metabolism, your gut health, and your long-term energy. If cutting gluten is step one, then choosing the right replacements is step two, and it's where the real transformation happens. Let's start with a powerful grain you may not be using yet: millet. This ancient seed has been a staple in parts of Africa and Asia for thousands of years. It's naturally gluten-free, rich in fiber, and, here's what's exciting, studies have shown it can actually improve blood sugar levels. One 2024 study on people with type 2 diabetes found that adding millet daily to meals reduced HbA1c from 7.6% to 6.9% in just 6 weeks. That's the kind of result doctors look for with prescription medications. But that's not all. Millet contains non-starch polysaccharides, which help reshape the microbiome, the collection of bacteria in your gut. Why does that matter? Because a balanced gut can reduce inflammation, support your immune system, and even improve energy and mood. That said, millet isn't perfect for everyone. If you have hypothyroidism or are taking thyroid medication, be careful. Millet is considered goitrogenic, meaning it can interfere with thyroid function if eaten in large amounts. And several viewers have shared in the comments that millet caused digestive upset or diarrhea. So like all things in health, context matters. Start small, test, don't assume. Next, let's talk about buckwheat. Despite the name, it's not related to wheat at all. It's a seed, technically a pseudo-cereal, with powerful anti-inflammatory compounds and a dense nutrient profile. Buckwheat is high in fiber, helps stabilize blood sugar, and has been shown to support cardiovascular health. Some people find it a bit dense for baking, but there's a workaround: sprouted buckwheat. It's easier to digest, releases more nutrients, and can be used in everything from banana bread to pancakes. Viewers have even said it helps them with digestion better than any other flour. That's a big deal if your gut has been under stress. And then there's einkorn. This is the oldest cultivated form of wheat, thousands of years old, never hybridized like modern wheat. Einkorn has a different gluten structure, shorter chains, fewer immunogenic peptides. For people who are not celiac but want to test their response to gluten, einkorn could be the gentlest starting point. One comment summed it up beautifully. Einkorn has about half the starch of white wheat. I tolerate it far better. That experience is echoed by others who say they react to modern wheat, but not to heritage grains like einkorn or emmer. But again, caution. If you're celiac, einkorn is still wheat. Don't go there. But if you're simply sensitive or unsure, this might be your bridge back to broader food freedom. So instead of jumping from wheat to rice flour and calling it a day, try these: millet for blood sugar, buckwheat for fiber and gut support, einkorn for careful reintroduction. Because the right grain doesn't just avoid gluten, it helps your body heal. So what if you're not celiac, but you've been avoiding gluten for years, and now you're wondering, can I bring it back? That's a fair question. And the answer isn't black and white, but there is a way to test carefully, intentionally, and without shocking your system. Let's talk about sourdough. Now, when most people think of sourdough, they think of crusty loaves and fancy bakeries. But what makes sourdough different isn't the shape or the smell. It's the fermentation. True sourdough is made using wild yeast and beneficial bacteria that break down gluten over time. It's not instant. It's not the kind of sourdough you buy at the supermarket that's really just white bread with vinegar. We're talking about slow fermented homemade sourdough, the kind that changes the structure of gluten. A 2025 study published in MDPI found that proper sourdough fermentation, using lactic acid bacteria and thyme, can reduce immunogenic gluten peptides by up to 99%. That's huge. It means many of the peptides that normally trigger inflammation or immune response are broken down before the bread even reaches your plate. So if you're trying to figure out whether gluten is really the issue, or whether it was poor processing or hybridized wheat, this is the best way to find out. But let me be clear. If you have celiac disease, don't try this. That remaining 1% gluten could still trigger a dangerous response. It's not worth it. But if you're just gluten sensitive, or you've been avoiding it as a precaution, here's how you can test. Step 1. Make your own sourdough. Yes, really. I know it takes time, but it's the only way to control the ingredients and the fermentation. You can start a starter with just flour and water. It's not complicated. It just takes patience. Step 2. Eat a small piece, maybe half a slice, on an empty stomach. Don't slather it in butter. Don't eat it with a heavy meal. Isolate the variable. Notice how you feel over the next 24 hours. Any joint pain, fatigue, bloating, or nothing? Step 3. Wait at least 2 to 3 days before trying again. The effects of gluten in sensitive individuals can be delayed, so spacing it out gives you clarity. This isn't guesswork. It's a form of what doctors call a gluten challenge, and it's often the only way to know whether gluten is still a problem or whether your body has changed. One commenter said, "I used to feel awful after bread. Then I made my own sourdough and nothing." It felt fine. That's the kind of real-world feedback we need more of. Because sometimes it's not the gluten. It's the factory, the additives, the speed, the shortcuts. So instead of fearing gluten forever, consider this. What if the process matters more than the ingredient? And what if your body is ready for something it couldn't handle before? The only way to know is to test carefully, intentionally, and with real food. Now, here's where things get even more surprising. What if I told you that some foods containing gluten might actually improve your metabolism? That's not a mistake. I'm talking about barley, a grain long overlooked, but one that deserves a second look, especially if you're navigating gluten sensitivity without full-blown celiac. Yes, barley contains gluten, but unlike modern wheat, barley brings something else to the table: V-glucan and arabinoxylan, two powerful types of soluble fiber. When these fibers reach your colon, your gut bacteria ferment them, producing short-chain fatty acids. And those compounds stimulate the release of a hormone called GLP-1. Why does that matter? GLP-1, or glucagon-like peptide 1, plays a key role in blood sugar regulation, insulin sensitivity, and appetite control. In fact, some of the most popular diabetes and weight loss medications on the market, like semaglutide, work by mimicking GLP-1. Here's the kicker. In a study published in the British Journal of Nutrition, participants who consumed barley-based meals for just 4 days experienced a 56% increase in fasting GLP-1 levels. Let that sink in. This wasn't after months. It was after 4 days. And that hormone increase happened while fasting, which means barley had lingering metabolic effects beyond mealtime. Now, does this mean everyone should go eat barley every day? Not quite. If you have celiac disease, barley is off the table, period. The gluten content, though different from wheat, is still enough to trigger serious damage. But if you're not celiac and you've already tested sourdough successfully, barley could be a smart next step. It's a way to bring back some gluten in a form that gives more than it takes. So instead of fearing all gluten-containing grains, consider the bigger picture. What else does this food offer? Is it feeding your inflammation? Or is it feeding your hormones, your microbiome, your energy? Because sometimes the right grain, even if imperfect, can become your ally. So here we are. You started this video probably thinking gluten-free equals safe, and now you've seen it's not that simple. We've uncovered the hidden risks of common gluten-free ingredients, like rice flour and tapioca, that may quietly raise blood sugar, feed inflammation, or confuse your gut. We've looked at better options, like millet, buckwheat, and einkorn, that don't just replace gluten, but support your metabolism and microbiome. And we've talked about something few people mention, that some gluten-containing foods, like slow-fermented sourdough and barley, can actually help you feel better, not worse, when introduced the right way. So what does this all mean for you? It means you don't have to live in fear of gluten forever. You don't have to settle for cardboard bread or mystery blends that do more harm than good. And you don't have to guess at what your body can handle. You can test, learn, and rebuild step by step. Start with removing the worst offenders. Replace them with smarter alternatives. And when you're ready, try reintroducing foods the right way, with patience, real ingredients, and self-awareness. Because your health isn't just about what you cut out, it's about what you build in. And if you're making changes to your diet and gut health, one of the best tools I've found is Seeds Daily Symbiotic. It's a combination of prebiotics and probiotics in one capsule, backed by real clinical research. I don't recommend many supplements, but this is one I've personally felt within a week. If you're interested, the link for 25% off is right below this video. And hey, if you've ever wanted to learn how to make your own real sourdough, let me know in the comments. I'm thinking about doing a full guide for that next. Until then, keep experimenting. Keep listening to your body. And above all, keep coming back because we're just getting started. See you tomorrow.